People mess up something. So we're going to talk about how do we so a lot of time that Daniela, you cannot see. You cannot see, right? Anybody willing to switch seat with her? So somebody in the front that can see in the back. Okay. You switch. Who else cannot see in the back? Okay, so sometimes we're gonna talk about. We already talked about solve linear equation, and even one with fractions. We talk about solving absolute value equation. The next one, we're gonna solve radical equation. So solve radical equation. Is the iPad recording?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So so how do I solve something like the sorry, that's a -2. How do I solve something like this? So basically solving radical equation, you just have to follow those two steps. The first step is isolate the radical. Now if you have two radical, you place one radical on each side. On each side. The second step is you're gonna square. Get rid of radical. So it's gonna be get rid of radical by square both sides. Square or cube both sides. And then sometimes you need a third step, is like if there's more radical, you have to isolate it again and then square both sides. But I think in this class, I'm just gonna stick with the easy one. So in this case, I just isolated it. How do I isolate a radical? You add 2 on both sides, right? So it's gonna be 2x minus 5 minus 2. I'm gonna rewrite that equation. I'm gonna add 2 on both sides. So that's gonna be 2x minus 5 is equal to 2. And then go to the second step is get rid of radical by square both sides. So I can square both sides. So square of square roots, they are inverse to each other. If they're inverse to each other, they cancel out each other. Like square root of 5 squared. What is square root of 5 squared? This is 5. 5 times 5 is 25, square root of 25 is 5. So then, if I square both sides, long as if I do something to the both sides of the equation, I'm okay. So now, the square root is gonna go away. That's equal to 4. I'm gonna subtract 5. That's gonna be 2x equal to -1.
Is it adding?
It's add 5.
Oh, add 5. Thank you. So that's gonna be 9, and then x equal to 9/2. Now sometimes with radical, is only time that you have to check for extraneous. In this case, you're gonna plug in, it's gonna work. It's gonna come out to be able to check. But I'm gonna give you a next case that you have a different issue. So square root of negative 10x minus 1 plus 3x is equal to 0. Now this is a combination of what we learned today and what we learned yesterday. Okay? So what we learned today, we had to do what? Isolate a radical and then square both sides to get rid of radical. And then you're gonna get to the format just like similar to yesterday's format, where you have a quadratic, then you might have to set equation equal to 0, and you have to solve for it. Okay, so I want you to try it. You should get 2 answers here on this particular one. And if it doesn't work, some people already done. You can see it. The both answers are negative. One's fraction, one's integers. Try it. What's my first step? Isolate. How do I isolate? Minus 3x on both sides, right? So that's equal to square root minus 10x minus 1 is equal to negative 3x. What do we say? How do we get rid of radicals? Square, not square root. So if I square this, what am I going to get? What is going to be this side? 9x squared. Okay. So now, here's the things. Most of you guys subtract the 9x to this side, which is I won't prefer that. What did I say yesterday? I prefer the leading coefficient to be positive. So I actually, in this case, I will reserve this on this position right here. And I will move everything to the right side. That makes easier to factor because the first term is negative, it's harder to factor. So I will add 10x on both sides and add 1 on both sides. So add 10x on both sides and add 1 on this side. So I'm going to get 9x squared plus 10x plus 1 is equal to 0. Then I'll go ahead and factor this, 9x squared, this is a 1, and this is 10x. Okay? Most of you guys still don't know how to factor. Then all we gotta do is says, well, I'm gonna get 10x here. So I need to make sure I get 10x. The only one, if I do 3 and 3, that's a maximum I'm gonna get 6 here. Does that make sense? So I don't wanna do 3 and 3. I actually wanna do 9x and 1x here. And I'm gonna do 1 and 1, so that's gonna be 9x, and the 1x, that's gonna add up to be 10x. Then my factor is gonna be diagonal, so it's gonna be 9x plus 1 times x plus 1 that's equal to 0. I'm gonna solve for it, 9x plus 1 equal to 0. Subtract 1 on both sides, so I'm gonna get x equal to negative 1, x equal to negative 1 over 9. and then x plus 1 is equal to 0, x equal to -1. Now here's the thing. The only thing that's different from radical equation, any other type of equation, is that radical equation here, the answer sometimes is extraneous. What I mean by extraneous is they may not work. So you had to plug it back in the original equation. Now since this one's kind of hard to plug in, I'm not gonna ask you to plug in. Normally I'll ask you to plug in. I'll give you two answers, then you have to plug in both choices and to see what happens. Because sometimes one of the answer doesn't work. Yes, AJ?
It says -3x squared, but then it says 9x squared, and then got rid of the negative.
Yeah, because the -3 parentheses square is what? That square is distributed to the whole side.
Okay.
So -3 times -3 becomes positive 9. Okay? So that x equal to -1/9 and x equal to -1. Question about this part. How many of you guys did not get this? Do you know how to get this? Huh?
I don't know, I think you did.
But do you know how to get it now?
Kind of, so.
Okay, so we're gonna try another one. This is a case I want you to try. The radical stop right here, okay? And also don't kill puppy when you add it. Okay? If you don't know what is, how do you kill puppy, you can look up Google, says kill puppy math, and it'll come up a dead puppy theorem, which is the oldest people make those common mistakes. For example, people do this all the time. And that's wrong. Okay, don't do that. What is wrong with that one? There is something wrong with it.
It's not equal.
It's not equal.
Yeah, I see that.
What it's supposed to be is that that's supposed to be x minus 1 times x minus 1.
Yes.
And you have to distribute that, right? And this is how they, so just don't kill any puppy while you're doing this problem. You have a radical stop right here. And there's only one answer here. And you gotta know how to factor. When you factor, you're talking about factor is GCF factoring. And then difference of the square, factor by grouping. Yesterday we have some question factor by grouping. I didn't see any of you guys go over. But there was some factor by grouping yesterday, from yesterday's homework. If you did it right, the answer, only one answer, and answer is equal to 3. So if you know what you're doing, right? If you don't know, you did something wrong. But we're gonna go over it, we're gonna give you extra practice so you can see how this actually works. Can I start now? Okay. So what's my first job? Isolate. So what do I need to move? This one and this one, right? So if I move that one and that one, I'm gonna move to the other side. Now I can see it much faster. If I move to the other side, this is negative x. I move to the other side, it's gonna become what?
Positive x.
Positive x. Plus 2, move to the other side, it's gonna be minus 2. Question about this part. I'm gonna square both sides to get rid of radicals. And then that's gonna be 4 minus x on that side, which is easy. But then on the other side, you have to be careful. That's equal to x minus 2 times x minus 2. What people end up to distribute the power end up to be wrong. So it'll be 4 minus x. So make sure this step distribute by rewriting it. Write the squares. So in this case, it's going to be x squared minus 2x plus 4. And that's equal to 4 minus x equal to x squared minus 4x plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. I'm going to add x on both sides. So in this case, I'm going to get 0 equal to x squared minus 3x. And then, what can I do here? How do I factor this?
Take out an x.
Take out x, right?
Yes.
GCF. If they have something in common, you take out a common first before you factor anymore. In this case, this is a factor here, and this is a factor here, so it's going to be x equal to 0. X minus 3 is equal to 0. Because I take this factor equal to 0, I take this factor equal to 0, so x equal to 3. So I'm going to get two solutions. Now, it's not done. For radical, you have to be careful. Radical, there's a lot of them are extraneous. So I'm going to plug in the 0 into the original equation, not any equation here, but plug in the original equation. So if I plug in 0, what am I going to get? 4 minus 0 minus 0 plus 2 is equal to 0. That's equal to square root of 4 plus 2 is equal to 0. That's 2 plus 2 is equal to 0. 4 is equal to 0. Is that true or false? False. So false. So that means this is no solutions. It's called extraneous. Extraneous solutions, so therefore you should exclude them by cross them out. And now here I'm going to plug in 3, so it'll be square root of 4 minus 3 plus 2 is equal to 0. That's equal to square root of 1. Minus 3 plus 2 is minus 1. So 1 minus 1 equal to 0. 0 equal to 0. So this one check. So this is true. So I want you to do this question, square root of 16. Now you gotta learn how to check for extraneous. That's the last question we're gonna do today. Then we'll just finish a radical. Tomorrow we're gonna go to square. If you need help, just ask somebody else help.